Now on Motorsport Radio, a season preview of Formula One with our journalist Joshua Howells. So, Josh, welcome to Motorsport Radio once again. Tell us then, for people who haven't been paying too much attention, in Formula One 2021, what stays the same? What is changing?
Well, there are going to be a few significant changes moving forward into 2021. One of the big ones, which was touched on by CEO and president of F1, Stefano Domenicali, basically he's hoping to revise these reverse grid starts that we've been seeing over the last couple of seasons. And his intention is to introduce some other ways of qualifying that are going to spice up the racing for the season, while also trying to maintain that traditional approach that they do have to racing. Now, he's been fairly tight-lipped about what we are to expect, but something he seems to be quite excited about is these Saturday sprints. Now, we don't really know too much about them, but they kind of do sound exciting. And I don't know, I think there's definitely something good in trying to spice up what we've already got. You know, try and experiment with things, and maybe we'll find a new way of qualifying that's both more exciting for the spectator and for the drivers themselves. So that's probably the biggest one that we could expect to see. He says they might be trialing it out this season. So again, we'll have to wait and see for more announcements on that. But as well, we know that most teams are going to be keeping their chassis, and most of the cars will be remaining the same. The biggest changes to the F1 cars across the board is going to be aerodynamic changes since they changed the rules. Now, these will mostly feature with the triangular trunks that are in front of the wheel arches at the moment. Now, they're going to be removing those completely, and Mercedes said earlier this week that could save them up to a second per lap. So I'm expecting some big things from these cars this year and a lot more speed from them. As well, they're going to be trying to cut back on the fins at the rear brake areas of the cars. This is to try and create less downforce and thus wear on the tyres. And as well, they're going to be reducing the diffuser fences as well. Again, this is to try and reduce the downforce since the tyres seem to be getting a little bit old now. That's another thing for this season. Unfortunately for Pirelli, they brought in a new compound tyre in 2019, but because of law changes, because of COVID and a few other variables, they unfortunately won't be able to bring in these new tyres until 2022 now. So this means that we have got an outdated compound running with these updated new tech cars. And I think there could be some potential issues in all of that, because we just don't know how the tyres are going to be able to cope with the new speeds and the change in downforce. And this as well, coupled with the fact that 2021 is going to have the shortest testing window that we've seen, it does sort of suggest that a lot of these cars are going to be a bit of a gamble for the first couple of races, which is certainly going to add to our excitement.
And as I mentioned, of course, the question mark over whether calendars may change, which nobody knows too much about, but right now, as we're talking in early-ish February, things remain the same, apart from the changes that have already happened, of course. But talking specifically team by team then, Josh, tell us then, the champions, Mercedes, what's big, what's new with them?
Well, officially, as very recently, as of Monday, the 8th of February, they will be racing with Lewis Hamilton, which is exciting news for any Hamilton fans and any Mercedes fans as well, because he's clearly the one that is providing them with all the success. I'm excited to see him come into this season going for his 8th championship to try and break Michael Schumacher's record, because that's just going to add to the hype of how Ferrari are able to bounce back. But we'll get back to that in a minute. I think the biggest thing that we need to focus on for Mercedes is they have announced that their new car is going to be unveiled on the 2nd of March via a digital event. And the big change to the car is the new engine that they've introduced. It's called the Mercedes-AMG F1 W12E Performance, which is an incredible name. You definitely have to take a big inhale of breath before you say it. But the significance of this W12 is that it has their first ever hybrid Formula One engine. And I don't know, a lot of people are quite skeptical about hybrid engines being introduced, obviously because we have our own E-Series for Formula races. But I think this is a sign of the times. It's a statement towards where we're moving as a society. And I think it's also quite exciting when you bear in mind this is an acknowledgement that we have basically gone as far as we can with the combustion engine. We now need to start sourcing these exciting new technologies to help get even more oomph out the cars and to make them go even faster. As well, they've announced that this e-performance tag that's going to be running on the Formula One is going to be the flagship and will be introduced to all of their consumer model cars as well. So in the very near future, if you were to buy a Mercedes, you would be driving a car with Formula One tech in it, which I think is quite exciting too.
Wow. Okay. And also tell us about Ferrari then. Carlos Sainz, as we know, has partnered Charles Leclerc for their challenger in their season. And so tell us what is in store for Ferrari.
Well, see, Ferrari seem to be one of the few teams this year that, in my opinion, are doing everything right. Obviously, last season, they didn't do very well. They finished 6th in the Constructor Championship, which was their worst finish since 1980. And they have addressed what I believe to be all of the major issues that really plagued their season last year. Firstly, like you say, they've got a new driver in Carlos Sainz. He's had some fantastic seasons over the last couple of years. He's maintained some strong consistency. Last season, he was often finishing in the top 5, despite having a car that might not be as competitive as some of the front runners. And I think, given a driver with his experience and his ability as well, in a car that should now be a lot more powerful and get a lot more performance out of it, I think that at the very least, he's going to be a bit of a handful for Charles Leclerc and hopefully a bit of a handful for Mercedes as well. Now, obviously, Ferrari are trying to gear up as best they can to stop Mercedes breaking the record they hold with Michael Schumacher and having 7 championships. The thing is, though, after last season, you'd have to expect that they're going to struggle a little bit. But what they've done is they've come up with a new Ferrari engine called the SF21. It's the daughter of last year's SF1000 that did so poorly. But like I've mentioned, they've tried their absolute best to focus on all of those technical issues that plagued the season so that this year they can really hit the ground running. Much like most of the F1 teams, they're not going to be changing their chassis this season, but they have confirmed there's a new power unit, a new engine, changes to the aerodynamics in their cooling system, and that they're going to be using their 2 development tokens on the rear of the car, both for aerodynamics again, and as well they're trying to stiffen up and tighten the torque, make it more rigid, improve the transmission so they get huge performance out of the car and really can compete for the championship this year. So in my opinion, I think Ferrari's definitely going to be the one to watch this year. How they'll hit the ground running, we don't really know. And there's also a lot of apprehension around Carlos Sainz because he doesn't really have any experience driving the Ferrari. But they have let him have a go in the 2019 model out on the Ferrari test track in Italy. He loved the experience. He's been given the opportunity to get used to the layout of the car and the steering and obviously the steering wheel layout and all of the buttons and that. So I'm sort of thinking that come testing time, we'll get a much better idea of 1, what Ferrari's capable of, and 2, what Sainz is capable of in that car. But I'm very excited for them.
Moving on to McLaren, and it's Lando Norris and Danny Ricciardo, 2 of arguably the most liked drivers in Formula One, and 2 of the biggest sources of banter and fun in Formula One over the past few years. But is it time now for Lando to grow up a bit and maybe for Danny to get a bit more serious?
Well, I do think there's something in that, but I definitely don't think there's anything wrong with having a bit of personality and likability as a person. Who you are off the track shouldn't determine who you are on the track, and they both proved in the last few years that they're more than capable to start competing for a championship. I think, much like I said about Ferrari, I think McLaren are one of the few teams that have genuinely done something right this year. They've addressed a lot of the changes that needed to be made. But, they're going to want to build on what was a good few seasons over the last couple of years and try and push forward with that. Now, they've been consistently finishing in the top 5, recently. And I think bringing in Daniel Ricciardo is exactly the move they need to be making here. Now, when Daniel moved to Renault, I think we all kind of expected what happened, that it was going to be a little bit lackluster. You know, he moved from Red Bull, a team that had an incredible car at the time that were really pushing, and then he moved to Renault, which were unfortunately not quite as competitive, and that's sort of where he sat. So I imagine this year he's going to be very eager to shake off those cobwebs, really give it his all, and try and readdress his career and get himself back on track. And I think, having Lando Norris there is a great idea too. They're both quite young. Like you said, they both got a bit of banter. I'm imagining they should form quite a good relationship together. And that could only bolster their team to push them forward into the future. I mean, Lando as well is going to be very keen to build on last season. He got a podium finish, 2 fourths, 3 fifths. Yeah. And I would expect him to do a lot better this season because, well, McLaren have been quite busy, quite honestly. On the 15th of February, we're going to have an announcement on their car, so we'll have more information for you as and when that all happens. But we do know it's called the MCL 35M, and they are the only team this season to have to readjust their chassis. And they've only done that because they need to accommodate the new Mercedes power unit. And from a car that already had some spectacular performances last season, now having a power unit from, well, the team that seems to be winning it all, I'm definitely expecting them to be the dark horses and to really compete with the top 3 this year, possibly even push Red Bull down a spot.
That's interesting. We'll wait and see if that does happen. Moving on to the next team, and it's Alpine, an interesting brand, one that seems to have struggled to connect with certain audiences, given the brand change from Renault.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. I can understand why they've done it, because obviously Alpine has such a pedigree with its racing. Obviously, there's a huge history of its classic racing back in the day. And clearly they needed to have a bit of a revamp and a rebrand, because while they were expecting Renault to do really well, bringing in Daniel Ricciardo 2 years ago, it just hasn't really happened for them. They've had quite a few technical and engineering issues as well. So, I have no issue with a rebrand. I think it's quite exciting. And if they are able to do justice to the Alpine name, then it will be fantastic for them. But, just changing your name doesn't mean you're necessarily going to do any better in the championship. And as they've not made any announcements about their cars yet, we can only speculate that it will be quite similar to last season. So we'll have to wait and see. But with a driver lineup of Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso, I guess anything's possible.
Possibly. Or maybe, as you suggested, they'll still be as lackluster as they were, especially with old man Alonso in the car. Who knows? I wish them all the very best, Team Enstone, a.k.a. Alpine. Over to the next team in Formula One, Alfa Tauri. And what do we rate of their chances?
Well, I don't know. I think Alfa Tauri are going to be an interesting one this season. You can never really expect too much from them, considering they are basically a feeder team for Red Bull Honda. But I'm very, very excited to see Yuki Tsunoda make his debut, just because he's obviously a former champion. He won the F4 back in 2018. And obviously, as a youngster, you can't expect too much on their debut season. They've got to do a lot to suddenly step up to the level of arguably the best racing drivers in the world. But he's young, he's enthusiastic, he's excited, and it's one of those, you never know what could happen in a season. He may find himself driving for Red Bull by the end of the season. So it's anyone's guess, really.
That is a possibility, certainly, given, they've done it before. They've had history of promoting and demoting drivers. Good luck, Yuki Tsunoda at Alfa Tauri. Next team, are we going to call them a new team? Well, it's technically a team that has been around for many years, but a new brand, a returning brand. It's a weird one, but welcome back to Formula One, Aston Martin.
Yes, indeed. I've got to admit, first and foremost, I'm disappointed that Aston Martin haven't hit the ground running with their own engine and power units and whatnot, but they're going to be using the Mercedes stuff, so you'd expect them to do a little bit better than last season, hopefully. You know, it's good tech as far as we're concerned, and they have a pretty strong lineup in Vettel and Stroll. But this is one of those, I reckon their first year will just be getting to grips with everything again, making themselves comfortable, figuring out their marketing strategy, and then we'll probably expect to see a lot more of them in the next few years. But obviously, Aston Martin, with such a reputation, aren't going to want to start Formula One on a low note. They're going to want to make sure that they maintain the reputation that they have in the sport. So although we don't know much about the cars yet, I'm quite excited to see what they have to announce for us, because I do really expect them to want to push on to at least finish in the middle of the table, if not towards the top of the Constructors Championship over the next few years.
Yeah, well, they did okay last year as in their previous team name, Aston Martin. Good luck for them, and we will wait and see how they do. Over to our next team in Formula One, and it is Alfa Romeo. Are they a bit of a nothing team, really?
I think it's a bit harsh to say they're a nothing team, but they are certainly struggling, and they have been struggling over the last few years. Now, I would like to get everyone hyped and excited about what they have to unveil, but they have been so tight-lipped, I genuinely don't know what to tell you.
I mean, what new are they bringing, really? Nothing.
Well, this is it. I'm not entirely certain, right? It's
exactly.
Giovinazzi and Raikkonen are going to be racing for them, so that's a good team to start off with. And we know that they're going to be unveiling their new car in Poland on the 22nd of February, so hopefully by then we'll have a lot more to bring you. But my speculation for what they're going to be bringing to the table this year is there's going to be quite a decent motor, right? Because last year they were racing in the C39, and this year they're calling it the C41. Now, I'm not great at maths, but that does suggest that this is going to be 2 levels above the car that we saw last season. And if the name is anything to take from it, then we should expect some big things. That's a big step up in technology, hopefully.
It could just be marketing as well.
Well, yes. I mean, there's a lot of that going around, but we'll have to wait and see. Like I said, 22nd of February in Poland, we'll have a lot more to tell you.
And over to the totally not controversial at all driver pairing of Haas.
Well, I mean, shouldn't we be getting excited? There's a Schumacher
I'm excited,
back in Formula One.
Definitely. I mean, hashtag Schumacher.
Hashtag Schumacher. Yeah, I think 2 new drivers. It's a fresh start for them. I would have to say, though, I never got the impression from Haas that it was their drivers that were the real issue. Certainly over the last 2 seasons, it seems like the car's been letting them down a lot more than the racers have. But with a new lineup, anything can happen. You'd hope that they have brought in some big changes to the car as well, although they haven't announced anything as of yet. I certainly am excited to see Schumacher out on the track competing with the big boys. The other one, Mazepin, is a really interesting one to note on as well, because technically this season he's not going to be Russian. He has to race under a neutral flag because of the anti-doping scandal for Russia. It's the same thing, obviously, that's affecting the Olympic and other sport events. And obviously this won't really be a big issue unless by some miracle he were to either win a race or the championship, because, you know, that's when you'll hear your national anthem and have to raise your flag. But other than that, there's nothing too much to say about Haas at the moment. But as soon as they announce their car, there will be a lot more information for us to give you, and we'll really be able to rate how they're going to do this season. Interesting that Russia have said no to Mazepin.
Over to Williams, and are they destined to be backmarkers this year with maybe all the extra confidence that Russell has, having been in that top seat last year briefly?
Well, yeah, this is the thing. I would have expected Williams to really want to push on this season. They've had a pretty torrid time basically this whole decade, quite honestly, and this will be the first season since the team was founded in the 1970s where there won't be a member of the Williams family in the team. Claire has stepped back. Obviously, Frank only came in to try and resolve things for a little bit, but wasn't really able to make any notable changes or differences. So the team will be running without a Williams behind them for the first time in what is it, over 50 years, basically. And I expected them to then take this up as an opportunity to go, right, new management, new team, new strategy. But from what we can already start talking about, there doesn't seem to be many changes that they're making to the car. Now, not much has been announced, but we do know that the FW34B will be the car they're racing in this year. And they deliberately named it the FW34B because there's not going to be a lot of changes. Last season's car was just the FW34. So, you can read into that as much as you like, but realistically, they've been trying to save as much money as possible over the winter break. They will be making some different changes to the aerodynamics of the cars, but they'll certainly be keeping the same chassis and the majority of the same power unit and engine and whatnot. So maybe they are destined to be the back marker this season. It's anyone's guess, really, but I would have expected bigger changes considering the management changes that they've made.
Good luck to the Williams team as well. And last but not least, and definitely one that we haven't forgot, is Red Bull Racing.
Yeah, now this is a really interesting one to talk about because they have been inundated with, unfortunately, bad press in recent months because Honda have decided to withdraw from Formula One again. They'll be leaving Formula One at the end of the year, which means that Honda will be leaving Red Bull without a power unit. So their main priority over the winter break has been to try and lobby for an engine and power unit freeze over the 2021 winter break so that they can maintain using the Honda engine into the 2022 season. I'm guessing as well, because they've had such focus on that as their issue, they probably won't have had too much time to have made amendments to the car. Certainly no big changes because they are trying to maintain this Honda power unit. So I don't know. That's why I'm sort of getting the impression this year that McLaren are going to be pushing for third place in that Constructors' Championship, because I sort of feel that Red Bull will just want consistency. There's not been a huge change to their driver lineup. Obviously, Sergio Perez has joined them, which is quite an exciting talent. But will changing the driver and not changing the cars too much really make that much of a difference? I guess only time will tell.
Surely will. And just before we go, Josh, from each team, I'm going to run through them very quickly. You tell us who you think. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I'm not sorry. Who you think will be the best driver at the end of the season of the driver pairings at Mercedes? Go.
Okay, I think that's going to have to be Lewis Hamilton. Obviously, he's pushing for his 8th championship. I think he'll get it.
Ferrari.
Ferrari. Oh, that's a tough one. I want to say Charles Leclerc just because he has more experience in the Ferrari, but in future seasons that could completely change on its head.
McLaren.
Daniel Ricciardo. I think this is his year.
Red Bull.
Max Verstappen.
Alpine.
Ooh. Ocon. I think it's got to be. We've got to go with the younger guy who's going to be more hungry for it.
Aston Martin.
These are getting tough now. I'm going to go Vettel, but that's just my own personal opinion.
Alfa Romeo.
That's probably the hardest one of all of them, quite honestly. I don't know. Will it be Raikkonen? Will it be Giovinazzi?
Yeah.
Let's go with Antonio Giovinazzi just because of the age, and again, hopefully he'll be hungrier.
Interesting. Haas.
Ooh, Schumacher.
He did struggle towards the end of last season on his way into Formula One. Sort of unravelled a little bit for him.
He did. Yeah, I mean, obviously, and there are going to be a lot of eyes on him bearing the surname that he does, but I don't know. I want to be hopeful. I'd like to think that maybe one day he might be nearly as good. Okay. We'll have to see.
And Williams.
George Russell. Yeah.
Okay.
I think George Russell is a really, really good driver, and he seems to just be biding his time until he makes it into a much faster car.
Well, if you disagree with anything that Josh has said today, or if you are a member of the team and know of any upgrades that you would like to set the record straight on, then do feel free to correct us. Get in touch at Motorsport Radio on Facebook and Twitter and everywhere else. And you can follow the full Formula One season on Motorsport Radio on our website, which is motorsport.radio.